What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. In today's video, I'll be going over some of the players who have risen the most in my rankings over the last 2 weeks. Of course, if you want to see my exact rankings, all players, sleepers, targets, avoids, you can check that out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So, let's start things off today with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was which quarterback with at least 5 red zone rush attempts led the league in yards per carry in the red zone. The answer was Daniel Jones, and Tyler Morgan got that first correctly. So, today's stat, which 2 wide receivers tied for the most fumbles lost last season? All right, let's look at who's been going up the rankings. You can see on the side, they have actually changed with one player who I'll get to because news is breaking right before making this video. But these are the rankings as of July 8th. Who's been changing the most? I believe the cutoff was 6 spots. So you had to jump at least 6 spots in the overall rankings. But we're starting off with Dalvin Cook. And this is one that I've thought about after doing some mock drafts. And I moved him back up to 5 because I understand the risk. And I do get it if you want to just skip over him and go to the other players. But he's far and away the clear 5th best player in drafts if he doesn't hold out, and I just can't justify taking any other players ahead of him. You know, wide receivers are easy to find middle and late, so I don't love taking Michael Thomas at 5. Henry has no real receiving upside and pretty clear touchdown regression this season, so I don't want to take him. Mixon, or I'm talking about at 5, because I'll still take them at the end of the first round. Mixon could hold out as well, so it's like you could argue, oh, we'll just take Mixon, but they're both facing the risk of holdout, and no one can really be sure who's more likely, right? So I think that I'm okay with the risk because of what you're going to get if he doesn't hold out, and realistically, right, let's say he holds out, well, you've taken this risk in the first round. You're drafting Alexander Mattison. Right? I mean, no question about it. Look at where he's going and take him like 2 rounds before that. So I understand it's going to hurt your team if he holds out for like 4 weeks and then gets a contract or something like that, or comes back after a month. But you're going to have Alexander Mattison, so it's not like you're taking a 0. So I'm comfortable taking him at 5. I do get a lot of questions about that, and I've moved him up to that spot in the rankings to adjust accordingly. Next up, we got DJ Moore, and I've moved him up to the wide receiver 9, 22nd overall. I've talked a lot about the top 6 wide receivers being locked in. Basically, everyone has the exact same rankings about the top 6 players. But after that, it's a little bit murky. There's a lot of discrepancy into where you rank basically the next like 10 to 12 players after the top 6. But I think I'm doing a good job at clearing up that mess a little bit. I've got Allen Robinson at 7, Kenny Golladay next up, and then DJ Moore. And I feel really good about that trio as the top 3. So why the confidence in Moore? Take a look at what he did last season. At age 22, he played 14 healthy weeks, then left week 15 after 6 snaps. So we throw that game out. Through those first 14 weeks, he was on pace for 98 receptions, 1,342 yards, and 4.6 touchdowns, averaging 13.3 fantasy points per game. And honestly, one of the big reasons he's not going where I have him ranked, I think he's going as like the wide receiver 15, 16, kind of that range, is because people are lazy. You know, they look at points per game on any website, and that's going to list 12.5 because they're going to count the 6-snap game. So it looks like he ranked 19th in points per game as a rookie, and people are like, oh, he'll be a little bit better because we think the offense will be better this season. But he actually ranked 10th. And remember, that's at age 22 with mostly Kyle Allen at quarterback. Now he enters his 3rd season. He gets an upgrade at quarterback, and the offense is not only going to regress positively for more touchdowns and probably just going to progress. Remember, regress positively means they'll get more lucky, but progress meaning the offense should be better overall, so they'll score more touchdowns. Not only are they going to be better, like I just said, they should throw for a higher percentage of touchdowns. They ranked last by a good chunk last season with just 44% of their offensive touchdowns being through the air. That's random. That's going to go up and down for teams throughout different seasons. So they ran for a lot of touchdowns last year. We can expect them to throw for a higher percentage this season, and that's going to benefit DJ Moore and all of course, the receivers, who again was a low-end wide receiver 1 on a per-game basis at age 22, getting unlucky with touchdowns. So he's an epic pick this season, and he's going in a really, really nice spot to where a lot of the times you can lock in 2 stud running backs and then grab him as your wide receiver 1, because I don't think he's going to rise that much in ADP because he's not a household name. But I think he will be at the end of the season. Julian Edelman is next up, and he moves up to my wide receiver 26, 55th overall player, which is what happens when you replace Jared Stidham with a former MVP. You know, the offense overall gets a big bump in yardage, in touchdowns, and that's going to benefit everyone. You know, and we know Cam excels in that short area of the field, so that sets up extremely well for Edelman to continue to be the team's top option in the receiving game. I do think Harry is going to get more work this season, and I will go over him in a minute, but Edelman is still the guy, and he's going to continue to rack up receptions, and that's going to be a really nice value in the middle rounds, assuming he doesn't just shoot up draft boards. But I think where I have him ranked is right at that cap to where people just aren't going to take him higher, right? That first 25 is relatively locked in, and then I have him right at the end of that tier. And so I just don't see a scenario in which people are taking him as a top 17 receiver and you just can't get him. So right now, great value, and I don't think he's going to shoot up too much. Anthony Miller, next up. I bumped him up to the wide receiver 37, right behind Slayton and Brandon Cooks, because I'm gaining confidence in him as a reliable starter in week 1. Going into the summer, I didn't feel great about his floor, but the more I look at things, the more I feel good about potentially using him as a flex option this season, just like I said, right in week 1. Now, it's pretty unlikely, given where he goes, that you're going to need to do that, right? Because we always draft running backs really early, so it's likely you're going to start the season with a running back in your flex, and then he's probably not going to be your wide receiver 2. But my point remains, if you did have a situation where you needed to use him in the flex, I feel pretty good about it. You know, he's locked in as the Bears' wide receiver 2, and they're missing 88 targets from last season. And I know some of you are like, Nick, that's barely any. You're right, it's basically middle of the pack. I think it might actually rank 15th or 16th. But look at where those targets are coming from. Over half those targets are from Taylor Gabriel, and the rest are just sprinklings of other receivers. That's significant because had the targets been missing from running backs and maybe a prominent tight end, then Miller's not going to see a big bump because they're going to be replaced with other tight ends, or they're going to be replaced with running backs. But that's not what happened. Gabriel was playing ahead of Miller a lot last season, and that was limiting Miller's snap share big time. I mean, Miller played 9 games with Taylor Gabriel and then played 6 healthy games without him. Yet, even playing in 3 fewer games without Gabriel, he still had 26 more total snaps, averaging more than 20 more snaps per game, which of course makes sense, right? Obviously, he's going to see a big bump in the snaps as the clear number 2. But over 20 extra snaps a game is a lot, and that's going to increase his floor and his ceiling. So we know that he's just locked into the snaps now, and when he was finally healthy and finally getting snaps to end last season, he was really good, and he showed that he was consistent and he had a high ceiling. And that's 2 things we look for players who are going in his range. So I see no reason he can't be someone we rely on this season in fantasy, because the offense is not going to be as bad as it was last season, and we all loved him coming into the league. You didn't find very many analysts who didn't like his talent. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy and get the snaps. But he's healthy right now, and the snaps should be there. So he's a great candidate to break out this season. Next up, we have Raheem Mostert, and I was going to talk about how I had him ranked about 40 spots below where he was going, and that was probably a little bit too low. So I raised him in the rankings. I still had him 20 spots now below ADP and ECR, so there's no way any of you are getting him. But then right before I was going to hit record, the news comes out that he's requesting a trade. So obviously, if you're doing a draft right now, you're not taking him, right? Because there's no team that he could go to where we're like, yes, that is just gonna have him have just crazy value for where you're getting him. There's a chance he goes to a team where he's still valuable, but there's no way he steps in like mid-July into this crazy timeshare. Probably going to be a timeshare, but it's crazy timeshare in his portion. So not a guy we were touching before, not a guy we're touching anymore. I guess it's really good that I put him in this video because it was nice to be able to mention him. But we need to see also on the value of Tevin Coleman and Freeman. Bring up Freeman because a lot of people are speculating that Freeman is now going to sign with San Fran. So Freeman becomes a guy you can draft late. Coleman becomes a more interesting name if they don't sign someone. But I have a hard time believing they're not going to sign someone. So I honestly think there's a lot of merit to taking Freeman late. But obviously, I haven't done the rankings yet because this just happened. But Freeman's a guy that is going to rise in the rankings a lot, and Mostert is going to fall. Because again, there's no team he's going to go to where we're just going to be extremely happy about the landing spot. It's probably just going to crush our dreams with someone else. And if he signs on Philly, I'm going to cry. Or I guess gets traded to Philly, I'm going to be very upset. So next up, N'Keal Harry. Same thing as Edelman, gets the Cam Newton bump. We've seen Newton elevate just the trash that was Kelvin Benjamin into a fantasy relevant player. And no one in the world thinks that Harry is worse than Benjamin. So assuming that Harry makes some sort of progress this offseason, he's a decent guy to target late in drafts. I'm not ready to call him a breakout candidate since he was just so horrible last season. But a lot of that was due to his injuries and just being a rookie and just not having those reps. So maybe if he's healthy this season, he can get more reps. I know they don't really have training camps right now, but he had time to develop in the offseason. Maybe he can take a step forward. So he is a guy with some upside late because, again, he was a very highly rated prospect last season. But ultimately, we got to talk about Cam Newton, right? This rise shouldn't need much of an explanation given that he was a free agent before these rankings or I guess 2 weeks ago, and now he's not. He's going to be the starter for the Patriots. I gave my take in the mock draft Monday this week, but ultimately I love the signing. It's a perfect fit, and he's just going to be fantastic in this offense. Stidham is not a threat to his starting role. Newton is the guy. I have said, though, we can't be 100% sure that Stidham doesn't start for like a week or two just because, Newton's getting in there in July. Ultimately, if you gave me odds, I would say there's maybe like an 80 to 90% chance that Newton is a starter week 1, and a close to 100% chance that he's the starter by like week 2 or week 3. Like he's going to be the guy very early in the season. And given the offense, how smart they are in game planning, given that he does have weapons, it's not elite weapons, but he's never had elite weapons surrounding him. Besides McCaffrey, who did he really have when he was on the Panthers? So I think he's got enough weapons and enough upside with his legs that he should be considered a low-end 1 to a high-end 2, right in that quarterback like 11 to 13 range. And he is another quarterback you can target late. And speaking of all these quarterbacks you can target late, I'm adding another one to the list. I've added Teddy Bridgewater to the targets list for quarterbacks. And it is becoming a reality that I am basically removing all of the early and mid quarterbacks. I say all, but it was like Kyler, Dak, and Josh Allen. I'm very close to just taking all of them off targets and just loading up these late guys. It is getting insane. The more research we do into quarterbacks, how many there are late. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, a super flex league, you can still go after those early guys. And you should look at the guide I have on the site when attacking that position. But if you're in a 1-quarterback league and you're taking Kyler Murray where he's going, even though I have that as a target, it's kind of crazy thinking who's left late. How often is Teddy Bridgewater still available when you're drafting defenses? This is a guy that no one's talking about, but he should be taken everywhere. The Panthers offense is going to be solid, and that's even without considering the volume. This defense is extremely bad, like probably the worst defense in the league. So they're going to be playing from behind a lot. And with how many weapons he has, it would be tough for him to not put up pretty decent numbers. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, Ian Thomas. That is a much better receiving core than the general public thinks. If you polled just like your average fantasy football player and you asked them to list off the Panthers offense, they're like, oh, well, he's got DJ Moore. Well, they don't have Olsen anymore. So McCaffrey, I mean, I didn't list McCaffrey because he's running back, but I guess you can add him to the receiving core. They're not going to be able to think about the fact that Moore, Anderson, and Samuel are all elite deep threats, as well as Moore and Samuel being great close, and Ian Thomas being incredibly athletic. And of course, McCaffrey is the best receiving back in the league. So they have really, really nice skill players, and he's a pretty good quarterback. He's shown that he's pretty solid when he's been given the opportunity. And then you look at the schedule. Okay, even if you're drafting this late, you're probably thinking, I mean, I'm just going to stream, right? Opens the season against the Raiders. It's just a dream matchup. So you can see exactly how this offense is going to operate in week 1. There's going to be people you can pick up on free agency if this doesn't work out. But just see what happens, because he's got the Raiders, 2 kind of rough games against the Bucs and the Chargers, but then he gets the Cardinals and the Falcons. So 3 of his first 5 weeks, you're probably going to want to start him because he's potentially going to be a quarterback 1 in a lot of those games. So I get it, being a little hesitant, being like, well, we haven't seen him put it together all that much. This is a different team. It's going to be a much better offense. They're going to have to throw the ball a lot, given how bad their defense is. And he's shown he can get the ball to good players. So, those are the players who have risen the most in my rankings over the last 2 weeks. Of course, you guys know I'm going to do an update to this video every 2 weeks so you can see from this point on who's been going up the most until late July. But that, my friends, is the end of this video. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.